What's up, man?
What's up? How's it going?
It's doing good, man. I'm doing good. How about yourself?
I'm good. We back for some more Exandria Unlimited,
Yes,
some more
we are.
Pixelists podcast discussion. I always need more D&D in my life, you know?
Me too, man. I guess it's been a couple weeks now, almost a month, right? Since it's been off.
Yeah, that sounds about right. It's let's see, because we had the wrap up this last Thursday and then 2 weeks before that. So yeah, we're actually right about a month, which is pretty wild.
Yeah, I've missed it. I've missed talking to you about it. So I'm glad, even though we don't have any really new canon to talk about, we are returning to talk about it. I'm excited. And yeah, we're the Pixelists, by the way. Hello. I'm Will. That's Blake over there. And together we make something greater than Voltron. And,
that's a bold statement.
It is. It's not true either. Nothing's cooler than Voltron. But yeah, so today we're here to talk about EXU one last time. Maybe not one last time, but one last time for season 1 at least. Yeah.
I mean, we say that. I mean, it seems like, Abria mentioned it. That's the end of season 1. It seems like there could be a season 2. We're recording this after the wrap up has happened. We talked in our last episode 8. You can go check that out, about what exactly happens in a wrap up. Will, who is our Critical Role guru, has been watching for quite a few years, gave us a bit of an insight on what a wrap up can typically entail. We did get some questions answered, but some things that was interesting to me, Will, is we didn't get any dialogue in that wrap up about a season 2. In fact, Robbie, Amy, I don't know if Abria mentioned it, but Robbie and Amy talked about, oh my gosh, like, why didn't I play sooner? Like, this was the greatest experience ever. Amy even mentioned, like, yeah, I was telling my gynecologist about it. I was telling my therapist about it. And everyone's kind of like, man, you're telling all these people. This is great. And they all kept saying, like, I hope I get to play again. Like, if I get invited back. And so to me, it tells me one of two things. Either, and we know the wrap up was recorded before the finale aired. So it could be that the finale aired and, Critical Role as a brand was like, hey, that was really great. Let's do a season 2. Or it could be Abria just kind of manifesting, season 2. It's got to happen, right?
Right.
Or they did mention that Exandria Unlimited would be kind of like this, story spots on different places that were happening in the world. So maybe there is a season 2, but it is another limited run
with like different cast, different
characters. And it's sort of like the micro stories that happen separate from campaign 3. What's your take? What do you think is going to happen? Are we getting a season 2?
Right. So one of the things we wanted to wait and do another episode of the Pixelists on this is because we thought we might have some more answers. And we honestly, we got a couple, but we really didn't get much.
We got a couple breadcrumbs.
Yeah,
sure.
We didn't really get much. But so like you said, I actually didn't catch this, but so they filmed the wrap up after they filmed the finale, but before the finale had aired.
Right.
So okay, I didn't catch on that. So yeah, maybe that was just at the time of filming it was still an unknown. But yeah, the way they answered, they went on both lanes here, and I'll explain what I mean. Is that, like, one, they didn't come out and say, hey, yeah, there's a season 2. But on the other hand, they specifically avoided some questions because they were like, like, I can't answer that because, like, you'll see, like, almost as if we're getting a season 2, and I can't answer that because it would be a spoiler.
Specifically, had a couple of things where she said, I can't talk about that.
Right. Which, if we're getting a season 2, great, of course, that makes sense. But since there was no season 2 announced, it's like, well, wait, why can't we have these answers then? So,
and it wasn't like we can't talk about it because Matt may use that. Abria was definitely, at least how I'm remembering, was like, well, I have more to share on that.
Right.
Was the impression I got. I didn't get it being like, I don't want to ruin campaign 3.
Exactly. It was like EXU specific things, and I wish I could remember one of the exact examples. Maybe it'll come to me in a minute, but it escapes me for now. But yeah, like, I think it was like even a question about one of like the EXU cast, and she was like, well, you can't answer that, you know, like hold on to that. And there was something even I think Robbie said, and I think it was either Amy or one of the other cast members was like, wait, like, what? Oh, I think it was he was saying what would have happened if he put the crown on or something like that. And they're like, no, that might, like, don't say that because that might still happen, type of thing.
Yeah, I think the phrasing was like, there's still going to be a chance for that. Like there's still going to be, and which, Robbie's character at the end of season 8 Braun actually says, after seeing Opal put it on, is actually I totally couldn't remember the name actually, and I was like, yeah, it's Braun, right? But I think even Braun, Dorian, whatever, says like, yeah, maybe we can all like give it a try, since it seems to be something like that. But yeah, you're right. He makes a comment and it's like, whoa, that might actually happen. Which, just not to get totally like off base, but I mean, now the magic's kind of gone of like putting it on, not putting it on. So like swapping it around is a little less, I guess, enticing. Would he put it on? Wouldn't he? It's a little less meaningful a storyline, I think, now. But anyway, you're right. They were definitely wary of giving out too many details in case there's a season 2.
Yeah. So to me, I feel like there's gonna be, like, I don't know why they wouldn't just come out and announce it. Maybe maybe they want to make a big thing out of it. Like maybe they want to have, that was kind of unceremonious if they just said like, oh yeah, like there's gonna be a season 2, by the way. I don't know. I'm just trying to think of excuses for them, but a lot of things pointed to season 2 for me, especially, I mean, I think you already said this. Abria even explicitly said like, that's the end of season 1 at the end of episode 8. So for my money, I think there's going to be a season 2, like with this cast, and there's obviously going to be more EXU on the whole, but I think we probably will get an explicit season 2.
Do you think that season 2 would be more tight knit in terms of story? Because it feels like some of the narrative has been so negative and so I don't want to say unanimous. I mean, I'm sure I enjoyed EXU and a lot of people enjoyed it, but it feels like there's been a common thread of story was really everywhere. It's kind of like it felt like we were kind of grasping for, okay, what is the narrative of this story? And Abria, and maybe this is a nice segue when we go back to, we mentioned in our first episode that there was a moment when they were outside the warehouse and Abria says, you all rush in. And I made a comment of, hey, that was interesting that Abria sort of pushed them saying, yeah, you're in the warehouse now. And we made a small dialogue around, is Abria basically taking them to like, this is the end point. And it doesn't necessarily matter where you go.
Right.
And we're talking about like differences of Matt Mercer style. And this is an 8-episode arc and like how much can actually be free flowing. But we did find out in the wrap up that Neerdal Pak and the Cube and this fight with what's her name? The Singorn elf. Myr'atta. This fight with Myr'atta and Ted that ultimately she revealed like, yeah, these were the final destinations. And to use her phrasing, I had to sort of railroad you without explicitly overtly railroading you.
Right.
And I think I even texted you when she said that, and I said, there's gonna be some people who are not happy with like, see,
Yeah.
And it's whatever you want to make of it. I mean, like I said, it's 8 episodes. You can't be on episode 8 and be like, okay, like where do you guys want to go next? It's a limited story. But definitely it felt like sort of the hand of fate, so to speak, was pushing them along. I don't remember my overall point with that other than just observing.
I think it started with asking if season 2 would be a little bit more tight knit.
Oh, yeah. So I would wonder if, what does that look like for a season 2? Is it the same kind of, this is where you're headed no matter what? Or will there be, will it still be as ambiguous or vague, though the DM ultimately knows you're heading to this destination? I'm curious to see what ends up happening. And I don't know if it's an easy problem to solve, because again, you want that exploration of D&D, but again, 8 episodes.
Yeah.
We got to go somewhere.
Right. I think it's never going to be like Critical Role main campaigns, which is, I don't know if right now in this in the podcast is the right time to have this discussion, but I know some people probably their first foray into Critical Role has been EXU, and they've never experienced an actual campaign. So stop me if I get too sidetracked, but I will just say that like I enjoyed EXUs. I mean, I really did, but it definitely had its faults. Like there's room to criticize there, and this is one of those things. Is that like, yeah, with 8 episodes, you kind of do have to railroad, and you kind of have to know the story you're telling and kind of direct it toward that. Whereas in a typical Critical Role campaign, obviously Matt has done like hundreds of hours of works into like plotting out, you know, a campaign and the world and stuff, but it's much more free flowing, and like the stories that like we curve toward get like fleshed out and organically made. Whereas here it's like we got all these introductions, but then just still ended up at point B, and we didn't really even get that much that set up point B, as it were. I'm probably losing my analogy here.
No, yeah. I mean, there's you know, there's more room for the food to simmer in the crock pot.
Yeah.
You know, and now we're trying to still do that crock pot recipe in like 15 minutes. And it's like, okay, well, you know, you can keep throwing stuff in there, but I mean, it's the payoff isn't like, ooh, that was sweet. That was good.
Right.
And I love what you know, something you mentioned, you know, you said you love DXU. I love DXU. I think there's an important distinction here between like a D&D home game, which Critical Role has said for a long time, hey, we're a bunch of friends playing D&D in our basement. You know, we're having fun. Like that's the feel we want. And I think in terms of like just a pure D&D game, it was really great. In fact, if you watch the wrap up, the team was effusive on their like, oh my gosh, this was amazing. This is so incredible. I mean, just constant praise. I mean, and naturally, they're not going to say anything negative anyway. Yeah. But these guys had a great time. Yeah. And like, that's what you want as a DM. You want your players to be like I DM'd my first game last week, and I've already gotten a couple of texts from people in the group who are like, do we really have to wait every other week? Like, I want to play again. And like someone else was like, no, we can't wait. Like that is a successful D&D game. But then there's this distinction now of Critical Role as a brand and like an entertainment option for people. And I wonder if that distinction is what is causing some frustration. Because again, if you're just watching for D&D, it's like, okay, that was fun. But if you're watching as like a experience, I think that's where there's a little bit more frustration. And I don't necessarily know how to marry those two worlds, I guess.
Yeah, I think a lot of people that were familiar with Critical Role and like have seen campaign 1 and campaign 2 came in with slightly off expectations. They expected Critical Role in a can. And this is just different because you don't have the same freedoms. You don't have the ability to like explore all this nuance and like whatever weird decisions the party makes, you don't have the time to like see that fleshed out. Here it's like, no, back this way, we have to do this. So I think it was great for what it was. People's criticisms are completely fair. And yeah, I just wanted to the people that have only seen EXU and like these are the same criticisms you have, I'd still would strongly suggest you check out campaign 1, campaign 2, or buckle in with us when campaign 3 starts, because a lot of the criticisms of EXU like are non-existent in the longer campaigns because they don't have these same restrictions. But to circle back all the way around to your original question of like, do we think a season 2 would improve on these things? I think yes, because I think there's just now we would then know that like, hey, this isn't just a story in a bottle. This is a bigger story that has time to breathe. It just might be, you know, we get it in chunks. So for me personally, like a lot of, I mean, I'd still have criticisms, but a lot of the things that like left a bad taste in my mouth would kind of be gone if I was like, oh, okay, well, it's just because we're going to get to that. We just haven't yet.
I mean, we hope so, right? I mean, it could be season 2. I mean, we joked how every episode, we had 8 episodes, and every episode introduced a new plot thread or a new question. You know, it's like watching Lost. It's like what is that? Who is that? What's going on? And instead of like moving towards resolution, it's like I keep like collecting in my hands plot threads.
Yeah.
So we say that, but I do wonder if a season 2 would be,
if the same thing just happened.
here's this red dragon in episode 1. You never see him again. In episode 2, it's this elemental who's attacking the city. In episode 3,
Yeah.
So I mean, I'm kind of poking fun a little bit, but I agree with you. I hope that now that some of the groundwork is there, it'd be a little bit easier to parse. But I don't know. I mean, it'll be interesting for sure.
Yeah. And one thing you and I briefly talked about, but I wanted to try to save most of our discussion for this, was that I don't know if disappointed is the right word, but we were both slightly, I'm just going to use it anyway, slightly disappointed in what the wrap-up offered, because I know you've never been a part of a Critical Role wrap-up before, but I have for campaign 1 and 2, and it's usually way more answers, way more information, and way more interesting questions, which, because the community gets pulled and they're like, hey, jump on Reddit, jump on Twitter, hit us with all your questions you want to ask Matt or you want to ask the cast. And so when you're mining information from that many more people, you're going to get a better variety of questions, in my opinion. And here, I guess because of the pandemic, because of how they were airing it after already filming it, or whatever the case was, they didn't poll the community for any of these wrap-up questions. They only asked each other. And so there were still some really interesting things asked, but it was a lot more how did you enjoy the experience, from the new people and stuff, not super specific questions on yo, Dorian, so your backstory, what's going on there, or the things you and I talked about throughout these 8 episodes that we were really wanting answers for. Now again, if we're getting a season 2, maybe those questions couldn't or wouldn't be answered anyway, but as someone who's seen the wrap-ups, I could definitely notice the absence of a lot of those hard-hitting, interesting, nuanced questions from the diehard fans digging through the details.
Yeah, and I messaged you maybe 45 minutes in and was like, hey, so is this typically what it's like? Because we and I think I asked how long are these things usually, because I think we were almost an hour in and we hadn't really got a single question answered. And it was sort of this, hey, you did a great job, and you and I don't fault anyone for that. It's just right. It's kind of like how the campaign was marketed from the get-go. It's an 8-episode enclosed campaign, and it clearly wasn't, or I mean it was, I guess, as we don't have a season 2 confirmed, but that led to some frustration of okay, so it's over, what, none of those answered. In the same way, I wonder if calling it a wrap-up misframed exactly what it was, because it was really an
after party,
yeah, it's like the special on the DVD of meet the cast, and they're talking to each other, and that was more of the vibe. It really wasn't a wrap up. And if you think about it, it's, if there is going to be a season 2, it'd be if Matt Mercer had a campaign wrap up during after 40 episodes, we're taking a 2-week break, let's do a wrap up.
Right.
It's well, you can't talk about anything, you can't really answer anything. So I think part of how it was framed created some of that disappointment. And then also, because of the way it was recorded, I guess you couldn't really collect those questions. And so it kind of left this, I mean, you call it an after party, and that's kind of what it was. It was yeah, this is fun to be here, but I think I had missed maybe 45 minutes at the end because my kid had gotten sick. And I was kind of you were hey, it's coming on again, the rerun. And I was I mean, do I really need to watch it? Because, and I ended up watching it on YouTube anyway. But it was there's only so much of hey, no, you were awesome. No, you were awesome. Yeah. Which, again, nothing wrong with that. I just was kind of okay, well, yeah, this is kind of what this is. The other thing that was kind of weird to me was everyone's deep analysis on someone else's character. It was Fern, oh, Fern was kind of like this, and this is the way that she approached. And, Ashley Johnson's kind of just yeah, sure. And they did that a few times with each other. Which, I mean, they're vibing on each other's character and oh, that was really cool. But at the same time, it kind of devolved into so this is what your character's like. And I don't know why that was weird to me. I was kind of just I don't know. I don't know why it was weird. For me, it was weird. I just was I don't know. Why don't you just let Ashley share? I don't really have a problem with it, so to speak. I was kind of just I think I was more just getting impatient around okay, now let's get to the juicy stuff. What are the big insights? So
yeah. I mean, I agree. I still enjoyed seeing what we saw, like because I kind of liked to see behind the scenes and kind of see them dissect each other's characters. Like I thought that I enjoyed that. I thought that was cool, but it wasn't what I expected. So like you said, maybe they kind of just marketed it wrong, like because it wasn't really a wrap up. At least, and I mean, I'm not trying to get into semantics of like, well, they wrapped up the campaign, like it was a wrap up. It wasn't a wrap up like we've seen with the previous wrap ups, where you like go behind, like get the behind the scenes answers. It was more just like an after, like an after party, I guess, which was still cool, but didn't get the juicy stuff that I was hoping for. But again, maybe it's because season 2's coming, so they were kind of steering away from that.
Well, what were some of the tidbits that we did get? Because we did get a few small insights.
Yeah.
And maybe I'll just go ahead and get this out of the way. We did find out that some of the things we had been wondering about is in this weird limbo state of like the missing week 0.
Let's talk about that.
Including the crater, which Abria mentioned that a god basically shows up and says, hey, don't go into the crater. But we find out that all of that stuff was basically playtest material. Like they were just like, let's do a practice session. And they pulled some of that stuff. And I call it weird limbo because it was like, well, that was playtest. So like, it's not a thing, but they also used it as canon. So like one of the big breadcrumbs that we got more of was that they were in a pocket dimension or pocket universe, and they were essentially all trying to escape.
Oh, they were in the Feywild.
The Feywild, that's right. What am I thinking of with the pocket universe?
I mean, that's like a thing in D&D. I don't know. I'm trying to remember if it was referenced in EXU.
I think they may have retconned it to being in the Feywild, but in this wrap up, they mentioned they were in like a pocket universe or something. And they were trying to escape. Either that or the pocket universe is when they were, Dorian brought like a dinosaur in to ride or something. I can't remember. Wherever the wedding was.
Yeah.
People haven't seen the wrap up are like, wait, what? What are we talking about episode? Again, all playtest stuff. But essentially, they had the crown, and they were escaping, and it was fy'ra and Dorian left, and Dorian essentially says like, later, and takes the crown and leaves fy'ra to the darkness or whatever. Again, just like a playtest thing, but we know it gets brought into canon later on. But for those of you who are wondering like what was going on there, what happened, like are we going to loop back around to that? Like you and I talked about like time travel or a time loop.
Yeah.
Sorry, it was just playtest. It was, these scenarios that they played through. Which definitely was a big disappointment to me.
Very confusing. And just to so you did a good job there. But like, I remember one thing they said was that, okay, so EXU, before it's a thing, right? They bring the cast together to like screen test basically. And so they're playing D&D together. And that's these sessions. That's what Blake just referenced. And one thing they said is that like, and they do that for the actual campaigns of Critical Role too, to give all the cast all a chance to kind of like feel out their characters, flesh out a voice if that's what they're working on, yada yada yada. But that's usually not canon. Maybe they'll pick and choose things like after the fact to be like, okay, yeah, I do like that. Let's say that did happen, but everything else, throw it away. So that's normal. But in the campaigns proper, it's never been such a like integral part that like is constantly referenced throughout it. And they said here that, yeah, it's not canon, it's can-ish, meaning like some things from that we'll take and some things we won't. But it's just weird that they did take some things, and explicitly what you mentioned of the memory between Dorian and fy'ra and him like leaving her. Like, that's canon, but now that makes no sense because, like you just said again, he had the crown, but this would have been pre-session 1. So like, how did they get the crown? Maybe, I mean, it's probably like I'm just reading too much into it. Just like let it go. Like, you know what I'm saying? But I don't know.
It's confusing because you can't have it both. In this situation, you really can't have it both ways.
Right.
It can't be, it was just playtest stuff and it's also can. And I get like the joking like can-ish, but like it's illogical, you know? And so, Anyway, I didn't mean to interrupt you. It's
No,
just
no. I mean, yeah. I mean, well said. That's basically my point. Is because, and I mean, it is what it is. Like, I understand that, like, they kind of wanted to just play with that juicy moment as a character moment between them because it was like this betrayal, as it were. So, like, that's an interesting thing to play with. So I understand like the cast like wanting to go that route. But just as a viewer, it's kind of disappointing because you and I this whole time have been like, okay, there has to be time travel, right? Like, what is she talking about? Has he already made this decision? And so just the payoff to all that speculation just being, oh, it was just part of the playtest that we decided to use, even though it doesn't make sense. And it's like, oh, okay, well, like I
it's
get it now,
deflating for
but
sure.
yeah,
Yeah, it's incredibly deflating. And it's also a bit deflating from like the perspective of if they already have the crown in the playtest. You know, you and I talked about this. I can't remember what episode, but it was like if there is sort of a forced story here, how much is the cast like privy to it? And it was either you or me. One of us had said like, well, I mean, it kind of ruins the fun a little bit to like know. And so like them having the crown in the playtest, it's a bit disappointing of like, okay, so then they knew there would be a crown and they
yeah,
already knew like that kind of stuff is a little less exciting for me. And clearly not for them. I mean, they had a great time. So I'm
yeah,
not, saying that they should be disappointed. Just as a viewer, it removes some of the wonder of like, okay,
agreed,
what have they found? What's next? Because in some ways it's already kind of orchestrated and planned. So, which
agreed.
again, it kind of has to be to some extent. But yeah, definitely deflating all those like times we asked questions. What's this? What's that? And it just basically being, oh, that's all just playtest. Like
Yeah,
didn't really, that's definitely like okay, well, you can probably cut like half of our content from this series on the YouTube channel because ultimately it wasn't anything.
yeah, and again, not the case with the main campaigns. So anyone that has only seen EXU, like, don't like you. It, yeah, it's not the same. So you won't be disappointed in those ways.
Mm-hmm.
So definitely check it out.
Other insights that we got that you picked up on?
Well, and I mean, maybe there's really no point to this, but I'm just kind of curious what you kind of. So we learned that from the playtest that they had the crown, or at least something equivalent to it in terms of like powerful artifact. We're in the Feywild. We don't know what they were fighting still. They didn't tell us. We don't know what they were fleeing from. We don't really know why Dorian had the catch-22 of he could only take the crown or help fy'ra. So no answers there. But we also were told that in the playtest is when they went in the crater, like you briefly touched on, and they went in there multiple times. We don't know why. But yeah, Abria did say, yeah, I had to just make a god come down and be like, hey, don't come down here. Like, this is too high level for you. So it just made me really curious onto why the characters kept going in there. Like, why, And then the only other thing we got was Dorian gave us this or Robbie gave us this huge teaser of he puts Orem on a dinosaur outside of like a royal wedding. And so, and I'm no like critical role savant in terms of like knowing all the lore and stuff, but as someone who is kind of familiar with the world, that got me wondering like, well, who the hell got married? That's a royal wedding. And maybe it's not actually like a canon thing. Maybe it was just flair for the playtest that isn't actual, like has no actual merit. But yeah, it's just all those zany things. We got dinosaurs, we got gods and craters, and we got Feywild shenanigans. I just wanted to know like what I would love a better picture of actually what happened in the playtest. Just since some of it is canish, just out of pure curiosity. So I don't really know where I'm going with this, but just that I thought that was crazy.
And I guess we'll probably never know. I mean, for me, I kind of take it as like, hey, here's the situation. You're at a wedding, blah 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 blah. Okay, what do you do? And it kind of just to kind of let them chat together and start to play together, and then maybe the later play test, because I think there was 3 or 4 of them.
Yeah,
because they mentioned how Amy couldn't make it to one of them. But maybe at a later play test, it was more of like, okay, now let's do it like in the world of Exandria, Taldore, Iman,
Yeah.
what have you. So yeah, I don't know. I mean, it's, part of me is kind of like, how much do we really talk about this in the sense of, it's canish. It's not, a lot of it doesn't matter.
Yeah.
So, and yeah. So it's interesting because, like, for me, like, we did have an episode where, like, we knew they were in the crater and a figure, like a flaming glowing figure, had come down, and I was like, could that be fy'ra? Like, what is that? And again, it's just playtest. So it's kind of like, okay, well, I guess we just move on from that.
Yeah.
But
oh well, they did tape it, so it would be cool. Like, even if it's not canon, even if it doesn't impact the story, I still would enjoy seeing it. So I don't know if that's even something they consider, but I would love to see the playtest footage, because I bet it's fun.
I think fan reactions have been so mild that they probably want to just move on from campaign 1, or from this season, excuse me. But I don't know. Maybe, I don't know. I mean, the reception has not been like over the top. This has been amazing, and so I guess I would just be curious if how much more content they want to share about it. So outside of like playtest material, we did get like a couple other insights, or at least rather like questions. Some people asked Matt Mercer like his reaction of the Observer taking an interest in Dariax.
Yeah.
And even like joked like, yeah, Amy said like ship it, like what could be happening there? And Matt Mercer was kind of like, yeah, I don't know. I mean, Dariax kind of just goes wherever he's sent, so he probably doesn't even have any thought or insight about it. I think that's right. I think that's what he essentially had said. Trying to think of other little insights we got.
Yeah. I mean, it was interesting for Matt to say that like the design of his character was really just to kind of go the opposite direction he usually goes. Because I know a lot of people had speculated, and I think even one of the cast said this exact same thing, that like, hey, did you kind of make the ditzy character because like as an excuse to like not use your vast knowledge of this world since you created it? And he was like, no, not really. Like, I just kind of wanted to make a character that I haven't really played before. And yeah, I don't know. I loved it. I think he was my favorite character. It was hard for me to pick, but I'm pretty sure I would go with him. So I loved getting to see that side of him. And as far as other little insights, we did get a peek into what Liam was thinking with, he said, and I assume this is probably because they had some new people at the table that he didn't really want to like take the captain's chair, as it were. So he said like he made a support character and wanted to kind of sit behind the scenes and just like watch other people play and just be there to like facilitate, which I thought was a pretty cool thing to have done. And I love Norm as well. It's definitely a vastly different character than we've seen him play. And he made some, he said he's like, I'm making my way through the OG 4 classes of D&D, which I know got a lot of people speculating like, oh, did he just reveal his campaign 3 character? So that'll be interesting to see if he ends up playing a cleric. Yeah, I saw similar conversations on that, and I mean, we're hungry, we're thirsty for more campaign 3 info. So yeah, it'll be interesting to see that. And Robbie said something also interesting, like on this conversation of like being the leader, being more behind the scenes. He said that kind of how he envisioned his character and designed his character, like once he actually got into session 1, he found himself more just like naturally playing this different, like he kind of envisioned this more abrasive is not the right word, but kind of like more overt, this is who I am. And he became more of like this similar to Liam's conversation, like this supportive, friendly, warm kind of person, which kind of fell more naturally into how he wanted to play the game. Yeah. Which is also the fun thing about D&D is, letting your character evolve as you play it. Right, exactly. Like you kind of have the idea of what you want on paper, but once you get in there, it'll end up morphing from that a lot. Which I think a lot of them kind of echoed sentiments of that. Yeah. Amy mentioned that she originally designed Opal as a duality character of playing both Opal and Ted
coexisting in one body,
Mm-hmm.
which is a bit in sync with what we talked about the mother with the two different eye colors.
Yeah.
Like what's going on with the mom, but ultimately ended up, okay, I'm just going to be opal because it was just very confusing and like mechanically a bit challenging. And then one other detail, I'm just looking at the notes that I took. Abria mentioned that originally she thought although the end destination was kind of already planned, she anticipated the party handing the crown over to Pascha or using it as sort of this bargaining chip to get into sort of the underworld of
Right.
Iman,
Right.
which ultimately, the party went in a totally different direction. So it seems like, the end goal was a bit more clear, but how we get there,
Yeah.
the party has a little bit of wiggle room to make it there.
Yeah, and I mean that does make sense because the final battle, the final conflict really was separate from the crown. Like it didn't have to be there, so it would have been interesting to kind of see like what little different story beats would have been throughout the campaign if they had just given the crown to Gilmore or or whoever, because that the crown's caused like most of, if not all of, like the party tension and interesting dynamics. So
I mean, I think the thing is though, if you give it away, just saying exactly what you just said, that was some of the most interesting parts of each episode.
mhm.
Like episode 5 was entirely hinged on Fern seeing the reflection of Dark Fern with the crown on.
Right.
Episode 6 was predominantly the series of dream sequences that they were each having. A lot of the story ended up revolving around the crown. I wonder what would have been as compelling if they had given it away.
Yeah, maybe we would have gotten more connective tissue to where we ended up had the crown not been in the picture. I don't know. But actually, since you say the Dark Fern thing, that reminded me. That was one of the specific things that Abria wouldn't answer because I don't remember what the exact question was, but Dark Fern was brought up and Abria was like, "Oh, you don't know that? Like, you don't know what that was?"
Right.
And they were like, "Well, what was it?" And she's like, "I can't tell you." So that was one of the things that I was like, "Okay, so season 2 or what?" Yeah.
It'll be interesting because I'm curious how much Matt will pull lore wise from Exandria Unlimited.
Mm-hmm.
Like, will there be the War Queen in campaign 3? And how much if there will be a season 2, how much he'll just, hey, that's off limits to me. That's what Abria is world building.
Yeah.
'Cause surely there's going to be a little bit of connective tissue to continue to build like this overarching world. But it will be interesting to see how much he does build on her story rather than leaving it to her own creation.
Yeah, I'm interested. I'm just wondering how that dynamic works because obviously he wants to be in the dark as much as possible for like what she did for EXU because he's playing in that sandbox and he doesn't want to know everything, right? But and I guess this kind of plays into if there's going to be a season 2 or not, but like if there's not going to be a season 2, then I'm sure that they could just talk and, now that it's done, you know, work together on that. But definitely some of that stuff is 100% canon. I mean, it's all canon, but like cemented because they announced they're doing the Tal'Dorei Reborn like campaign book or whatever,
Right.
and Abria like shared a page from that, and it's one of the maps, and it shows Near Del Pac on it, and she's like, "This is like
Right.
the proudest moment of my D&D
Right.
career," and so like shit she built is 100% like in the world. Matt will probably use it, maybe not like as in they'll go to Near Park, but like it's part of the lore, as it were. So yeah, I'm really curious how they are collaborating there because surely he's not like, yes, he's giving her free reign. I don't believe that he like gave her any restrictions, but surely that he like he would have to talk to each other to like figure some of that out. So I wonder what that dynamic is like.
Yeah, I mean, and there was probably like a mutual understanding. I mean, like Abria didn't like, episode 3, a god comes down and stomps on Iman and it's destroyed. Like,
Yeah,
I mean,
Gilmore has a heart attack.
yeah, he's dead. I mean, I don't know. I mean, yeah, we'll see. And part of me, like, I'm trying to think if there's any other things we didn't address, but if if there is a season 2, whatever campaign 3 has, hopefully there'll be more things shed light on. And for those listening who are thinking like, okay, what about this? What about that? I think we've covered everything that actually got more attention. So like if you're wondering what about that one thing,
Hit us
chances are
in the comments because I
yeah,
want
I
to
mean,
know. And
I'm trying to think. I'm trying to think if there is anything else that we forgot. But not to sound like a broken record, but it didn't get answered. If there's something else that another plot thread you're wondering about. And I did look through my notes. I didn't see anything else that that was talked about that we could have mentioned. So
yeah, I think we hit most of it. I do have a question for you if you're thinking we're pretty much wrapped up though, but I don't want to.
I have a question for you as well, but you go first.
Okay, I was just gonna ask. Now that we're finished, now that we've had some time to sit with it, what would you give EXU on the whole? Like, you can give it whatever grade you want, but it could be out of 10, could be a letter grade. Like, just where does it sit with you now?
It's hard to answer. It's hard to answer because like, and it goes back to that friction between D&D, like watching people play D&D and Critical Role. I think I think there's a distinction there. I'd probably give it a 6 out of 10. I think those 6 points would come through like I enjoyed each episode. By Roden was amazing. The pageant was amazing. I realized that what I watch D&D for, though, is the world building and the world unfolding into this, incredible story. Like I watch it for another form of story content. That is how I've realized that is why I watch Critical Role. And since most of that was not resolved, it ultimately left me feeling pretty dissatisfied and let down at the end of the show. 6 out of 10, like we're in a culture today where like anything like below a 9 out of 10, it's like, oh, it sucks. Like I think 6 out of 10, I'd put it above average. I think it was a good show. I liked it. It wouldn't be something that I would probably watch through again or think would be ultimately overall very stellar. So what about you?
That's fair. Honestly, I think I was gonna say 6.5. But you basically echoed my exact sentiments. Like I had a great time every week watching it, especially because you and I were doing this. That was really fun. Loved Robbie. I mean, I loved the whole cast, but I love seeing
Same.
Robbie and I love seeing Amy and I love seeing the new style Bria brought. Like I had fun and like I fell in love with all those people just like I already love the rest of the cast. And so that's all high marks there. And I loved the like character dynamics with each other. Thought that was all great. But yeah, my disappointments came with, not really the tightest narrative, not really getting any answers to the interesting questions that were brought up throughout the campaign. And for that, it loses some points. And yeah, maybe we get a season 2 and, maybe we get these answers. And if so, great. But, maybe some of this was based on how they presented and marketed what we were getting. But
yeah,
had a good time, enjoyed it thoroughly. But yeah, 6.5, which again, kind of also to echo what you said, just because it's not like a 9 or a 10, isn't, I'm not saying it was trash.
Yeah, I mean, anyone who like, you look at ratings online, like I said, if it's anything less than like 90, it's like, that must have sucked. Definitely not what I'm saying. But like I said, above average. And I don't know if it's similar for you, but like I said, I think everyone who watches has a different reason they watch D&D and they watch Critical Role. And I think you and I are on the same page. That narrative story is really important. And you made a great point because you pushed back on me last episode. I said, well, it's 8 episodes. Can you really, it can't it's not like they can be in a cave. And you were like, no, like you can make a really compelling story being in a cave. And you and I talked on your stream a couple days ago about some of our favorite one-shots that we've seen that were really awesome and really compelling. So it can happen in 8 episodes. I think for us, it didn't necessarily.
Yeah. And again, I know I'm a broken record at this point, but I do want to reiterate for anyone that like dove into this EXU, and not even if like, hopefully you liked it, at least somewhat. But if you're kind of echoing the same criticisms as me and Blake, like please check out the longer campaigns because they are so good. And like these issues are non-existent in those. Like, it's massively long content. So, you know, that's the trade-off is, yeah, you're going to get this amazing story with the answers and everything fleshed out, but, you know.
Well, so my question for you as we're wrapping up is lowest point and highest point of the show for you. And I'll ask lowest first, and then I'll share my lowest, and then you can share your highest, and I'll share my highest.
Oh man, okay. Well, I feel like if I like sat with that question for a day, I could give you a much better answer, but just off the top of my head, I mean, I don't know if this kind of counts or not, but like the lowest, I guess, would be the fact that the ending didn't really offer me the answers I wanted, but that's not like a specific moment that like I thought sucked, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, so I guess that would be my answer, and if I'd have to think about it, like an actual moment that like I thought was not the greatest.
Yeah, no, I mean, it's similar for me. I think my lowest moment, similar to that, it was at the end. It was probably putting the crown on, was a low moment for me, only because you and I talked about in episode 8. It felt kind of forced, and the stakes weren't quite there.
Right.
I think it was great for Opal to put it on. It was a cool moment for her character, but like story wise, it was it fizzled, I guess, for me. Highest moment for you?
Highest moment, definitely, and I'll try to get, I know this is going to be generic, but highest moment is definitely just the party interacting with themselves, like at camp at night and stuff. Specifically, the bromance between Dorian and Dariax was probably one of my favorite parts. And then one moment that sticks out in particular, and I hope I'm not stealing your shine here, but it was the Orem and Dorian, like, yo, you're gonna put that crown back, we're gonna have a problem. Like, that was awesome.
Yeah, that was awesome, and it was definitely like a tension you could feel just watching it. My highest moment would be the pageant. Liam O'Brien as the dwarf. Yeah, I mean, I was just I was smiling the whole time. I mean, he was amazing. The whole pageant was amazing, and definitely the highest point of the show for me.
That's true. That was really good.
And for those of you guys who are watching or you're following in the Twitch stream, definitely let us know. You can let us know on YouTube your highest moments, what you loved, what you didn't love, and even you can grab our rating scale from 0 to 10 and let us know what you'd rate the show. And yeah, Will, what else we got to share?
What else do we got to share? If you are a Marvel fan, MCU, Blake and I are currently doing episodes on What If, which is airing right now every week. Bro, no spoilers, obviously, but you got to watch this newest one because we got to talk about it tonight.
I'll watch it tonight.
And what else? Oh yeah, this is good. For anyone that is watching this, let us know, would you be interested in this type of stuff, but on campaign 1? We're floating an idea. I'm trying to see if I could get Blake to rewatch campaign 1, because he's not, well, you've seen some of it,
right?
So I'd love to like rewatch that with you and discuss it. So is that something you viewers would be interested in, or not really? Let us know.
Yeah, because we're in the situation of like, okay, what's campaign 3 is looking like October at the earliest. So what do we do that's more D&D content for our awesome fans who want more D&D content? And yeah, we'll floated this idea of like, what do you think about a campaign 1 deep dive? I've never seen past like maybe episode 20. Will's obviously seen the entirety of campaign 1. So yeah, let us know below if you'd enjoy that, if you'd like that. I'd be going in pretty much blind, and Will would be the mastermind who knows everything that's going to happen.
But I wouldn't spoil anything. Plus, it's been a long time. Like, I don't really remember like the nuance of each thing. Like, you know, I just remember the grand swipes. Strokes.
We've also thrown out an idea of like some above the board like DM to DM discussions.
Yeah.
Will is a freaking amazing DM. He's been a DM in a campaign that I've played in. I mean, if you think he's like Matt Mercer light, I mean, he's got the voices, he's got the world building. It's really incredible.
Not true.
I just DM'd my first game with 7 people this last week, and I'm doing some world building with them. And so we've floated the idea of just some DM to DM discussions of like, you know, how we see things, or maybe even like going back to campaign 1, viewing it through the lens of a DM. Like, okay, what's happening here?
Yeah.
All that to say, it's all up in the air. We're just trying to think about, we both love D&D. We know you guys who are watching also like D&D. So let us know in the comments, what would you like to see? What would be fun for you? And we can make it happen, because we're a couple of nerds who more D&D is good for us.
That's right.
Yeah. Also, don't forget, we're on Twitter. We're at Pxlists, Pxlists. And you can tweet us there. Let us know what you're thinking, what you want to do. And all that to say, thanks for following the podcast. Thanks for following our channel. And absolutely, thanks for commenting. We love seeing comments and people's, somebody put in like a really long take on the series as a whole. We love reading that stuff, love seeing that stuff. So don't be a stranger, for sure.
Yeah, for sure. It makes my day when I see we get a comment, because I love hearing from you guys.
What's our thumbnail going to be today?
What should it be? Wrap up.
Should it be like we're sad it's over type of thing? Or
yeah, okay, why not?
Maybe like shed a tear, or something, or yeah, something like that. Okay, yeah, let's do that. Got it. Nailed it.
Nice.
So, all right. Well, that's all we got. Thanks for listening.
Yes, sir.
Later.
Bye, y'all.
See ya.